Prof Busisiwe Mkhwebane has previously said she didn't have resources to do this. Why the apparent U-turn?
Yes, indeed, because so far we haven't heard that money has been advanced to ensure that there should be additional performance of the works that ought to have been done, but it couldn't have been done. Safe to say that today at least there is a concession that indeed she will get the money. But remember, the winds of change have been blowing across the breadth and depth of the Republic. The political landscape have changed. The shields that protected some and some relied on for their survival have since left the shore. And as such, human being who we are, we also look at our own survival and our own interests. Because if I was told that money has been advanced, then I'll perform the work, that's something else. But to say I am going to do it, one could only attribute this to political pressure, at the same time to self-protection instinct that is peculiar to all human beings.
It may be self-preservation, as you say, but of course we know she's come in for heavy criticism, particularly after her initial report in which she didn't investigate the roles of Magashule and Zwane. But she'd also said at the time that the Hawks were doing those investigations. What, have they stopped?
Yes, indeed. You see, it is due to human capital, right? Lack of capacity, to financial constraints. Where the two addressed up till today, I think the answer is in the negative. Now, your question becomes even more pertinent, that indeed, why now? But now, and we were told, why run concurrent investigations while we have got limited resources? Again, that question also needs to be raised and honestly responded to. But all said and done, it's never too late to do the right thing. It is just unfortunate that she's seen to be performing and responding only when she's put under the spotlight, and she has been weakened in the extreme. She didn't start well, but some of us had hoped, given a chance, she could acquit herself well in due course.
Well, the fact that she's continuing to give different explanations every time she goes to Parliament is going to raise more questions about her competence. I mean, in February, for example, she directed the Free State Premier, Ace Magashule, then to institute disciplinary proceedings against all implicated officials involved in the project and to submit a report to her office. Now, what happens to that process if he's suddenly now going to be under investigation himself?
Yes, indeed. Now, and why arrive at that decision when the man himself was heavily implicated? Right.
Precisely.
But at the same time, indeed, the political climate at the time could have allowed her to go in any direction, counting on the protection and the shield that was there then. Because Mr. Magashule and Mr. Zwane are and were heavily implicated, and it could have not been advisable to say that Ace could be the judge and the referee in his own court. She knows the law better than I do. It ought not to have happened, but she allowed it to happen. And again, it impacted on her integrity and indeed on the honor of the office she holds. And I keep saying I find it regrettable, because I can only wish her well and hope she does the right things. But unfortunately, consistency is not the hallmark of her execution of her responsibilities.
In February, she also insisted that her report wasn't a whitewash and that it had been completed before her tenure by her predecessor, Thuli Madonsela, in 2015. The question is, why would the previous public protector have sat on the report for nearly a year? But
that question could be asked, and rightly so. But at least if she has taken it as it was, but if it had to be completed, then she had a duty to raise certain questions and to deal with them and to listen and to respond to men whose bona fides, men and women whose bona fides were not in doubt or in question. It's not like everybody's out there to get her, but at least listen and be responsive. Be don't be impervious to positive influence. And I think at one stage, she seemed to have said, I've got my own vision. At all costs, I'm going to implement it. And that's where she earned herself more enemies or more non-friends. Perhaps enemies is too strong. Non-friends, and that didn't help her cause. That is what brings her perpetually into the spotlight, and indeed and unfortunately in the negative.
Of course, she's got the right to her vision, but all these things must be done within the ambit of the law. We also know the High Court in Bloemfontein granted the asset forfeiture unit a preservation order, stipulating that that amount of 220 million rand that was involved in the project constitute proceeds of crime. I mean, in one example, the company involved in the project went from 900,000 rand in its bank account to over 34 million rand in a day. We know monies were siphoned off to various Gupta accounts. Surely all of these were glaring issues for the public protector to investigate, particularly when it comes to the political principles.
Yes, indeed. Look, we can say as much as we please. She certainly did not cover herself in glory. And one would hope that she will be responsive, because so much evidence was advanced that could have assisted and made her case, even in her assistant and helpers, easy. Because sometimes you really don't need a lot of money to conduct certain researches, because you find that there's sufficient evidence where you can make a pronouncement there and there without any complications. But it's attempts at being seen or perhaps protecting others, those who ought to be brought to books, and attempts at deliberate should work being done in order to acquit people, or at least not to arrive at what I can call almost definitive responses or conclusions that make her look so vulnerable in the extreme at times. And my sympathies to her, because you remember, when it comes to the Absa, the Bangkok saga, again she was found to have been extremely wanting to a point where she had to pay out of her own pocket. That's a very serious indictment.
So,
and
Prof,
indeed,
in that regard,
it
I must
doesn't
come
augur
in
well
there.
Going forward.
I must come in there, Prof. In that regard, as far as the Bangkok matter is concerned, given how damning the criticism was from the High Court about her involvement in that case, I mean, is it your sense that this is a competent person fit for purpose?
Yeah, look, yes, and by the way, I must just concede, maybe a former student or so, but let me just concede that her entry into this space was not without contestation and controversy. I had hoped that she would take advantage and say, I'm going to prove Rob wrong. There was somebody somewhere from the Northwest who was appointed the Chief Justice, and he was given less chance to succeed, and he's proven to be doing a sterling work. And within that spirit, I said, give her a chance. But there were people who had sufficient evidence to suggest that she's not a fit and proper person. And indeed, the criteria, the fit and proper person, she didn't fit that then, but they always say, give her the benefit of that. And she has failed dismally after having been given the benefit of that.
Prof, has she done the job?
Yes, I'm saying she has failed
Can she do the job? Can she do the job, Prof?
Yes, no, I think she has failed so far. Okay, can she do the job? She's failing to do the job. She is failing to do the job. And the courts have said that much. And I'm saying I've given her enough space and time to at least make up, and she has failed.
Well, on that note, we will leave it, Professor Tefo, saying that not covered herself in glory has the public protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane. Over to Francis.